welcome to another episode of the Black Space Project. Okay, let me show you what I did as a result of this invisible drone, because the effects that I described, some of the effects that I described, was most intrusive, so I've made protective measures to block the effects and of this laser light that's pulsing at a low frequency of about 5 hertz. And it works really well. It's very simple. And let me show you the what I did here. So what I've simply done was this right here. If you can see, this is the window in which this object was detected. And I theorize that these invisible drones are around us all the time, producing certain physiological effects, psychological effects. I even go a step further and will tell you that I believe this thing is actually maybe alien in nature to our planet. But I simply put some poster board paper up here, which is black in color, as you can see. And so far, for the last few hours that I've had this up here, I've had no interference whatsoever from this drone, which happens to be invisible, that does exist. And I will show you other proof of the effects of this drone in just in the next clip here.
Watch closely as I pull into this gas station and the invisible drone tries to target me while I'm driving and accidentally targets the dash cam twice. So, after I left the gas station, the SMD, which is also known as the SMD for abbreviation, Sandman Drone, the invisible drone, it also targeted me as I proceeded up the highway. And I'm going to show you that in the next video also. Take a look at this.
So, the existence of this thing is undeniable. It does exist. Whether or not you believe it, that's up to you. But I have proof right there that there's something of a laser light emitted source in nature that's invisible that is affecting the dash cam. This is no Photoshop, this is no trick photography. There's no need for me to even mention that. One thing I do want to advise that I've learned about this thing is that if you were to pick up your camera, your phone, and point it at the direction in which this SMD happens to be residing, and when you're driving and have your camera function on, it will avoid it. Now let me tell you something. How to detect whether or not this SMD is targeting your eye. If you feel pain, pain in your eye, or an overwhelming pressure sensation, as if you're looking at the sun, chances are this SMD is firing an invisible laser light at your eye. What this thing has been known to do, from my observation over a period of time, is that while driving, it will hit you with a low level intensity beam for whatever period of time and bring you to a subdued point in which you become sleepy, drowsy, subdued, whatever the case may be. And I have noticed that this thing has purposely tried to cause accidents. And I suspect that a lot of single car accidents that I've seen within the state that I live in is the direct result of this SMD. I have proof of that. Proof of what I just showed you. Now, as far as proof of the whether or not it caused an accident, just for the fact that I've seen on the news countless number of times where there are single car accidents in which it doesn't make any sense, in which the person that's in a single car accident either goes head on with another car at exactly the same time another car is coming head on, or it's a single car accident in which the person always hits a tree or a telephone pole. This thing is very precise, down to the second. Now, if you watch the video, if you noticed where the SMD was trying to make its most effort in aligning its laser as it points on the highway in which it were to, say for instance, if it were successful, and it just so happened that I had a pretty good amount of sleep that day, that night. So the effects of this, when it did line up with my eye, didn't bother me so much to the point that it incapacitated me and knocked me out. Just want to be frank about it. Just be blunt about this thing. This is what it does. It puts you to sleep. What I want to tell you is that this is to be taken serious, not to be taken lightly. It will affect those that have had not that much sleep, or people that are deficient in some type of vitamin, possibly vitamin D, whichever the vitamin is that's responsible for alertness in your body. If you're lacking any type of nutrients whatsoever and you are susceptible to falling asleep very easily, this thing will definitely knock you out in a second. Now, let me explain to you about this, I've known it to work, excuse me. Over time, what I've noticed, what it does is, at specific points at certain times, down to the second, it will incapacitate you with a low-level beam at your eye. It's always been my right eye that it affects, so much to the point that I feel pain in the eye when it's doing it. Yes, you can block it, but for some odd reason, and let me explain, putting your hand up to your eye very close, it seems as though you can still feel the effect as if the laser beam is basically penetrating your hand. But if you were to distance your hand out away from your eye at a certain point, which is I think is a certain key focal point away from your face and between you and the SMD, then you create a block. But once this SMD sees that you're doing that, it will move. It will move left or right of your hand. And wherever you reposition your hand to block it again, it'll move again. Over time, you will begin to train your feelings that you feel in your eye and correspond that to where it's at and know exactly what position it's facing you or pointing a laser light at you. You will know what position it is in just by the way it feels. This thing is either being controlled by an intelligence or it's an artificial intelligence. There are many times when I looked directly at it, depending on where I feel it's exactly where it's at, pointing that laser eye at me, pointing that laser at my eye, I should say, and it moved as if, oh my God, if it's an artificial intelligence, it realizes that it's being watched, that it's being detected, that it's been discovered, and it will flee to the left or flee to the right or just move away and come back. My first awareness of it was while driving, and I knew when I passed a certain point on the highway that there was something always bugging me from the passenger side. And with my logical way of thinking, I always thought that it was some secret operation there in the woods, pointing laser lights at people, invisible laser lights, and I'm very good at what I theorize. So every time I passed this specific spot on the roadway, I would look into the woods, and when I did, the feeling in my eye went away. And one day I just decided, let me be a little bit unpredictable about this. So I passed by the spot, paid no attention, feeling the same feeling at the same spot, along the highway, as if it's emanating from the woods. And so passed by the spot again the next day, and was slowly cutting my eye a little bit to the right to see if I saw anything with my peripheral vision. Nothing was there. Next time I passed that spot, same thing I felt, as if a laser eye, the feeling of it was like a laser light pointing at my eye. It feels like looking at the sun. That's just how strong it is, and the intensity varies depending on when it wants to produce the maximum amount of effect on you to instantly, what it does is it feels like it knocks you out. Seriously, that's what it does. It just basically knocks you out. You lose consciousness, and it can happen in a split second. If you're really sleepy, if you're really tired, and when it turns up its intensity, the full intensity, you will completely just drop out. And I've seen this in other drivers passing by, as if, it made attempts to target me, but was unsuccessful because at the time I was on a lot of caffeine, drinking a lot of coffee because I was aware of this thing. I've been aware of it for a very long time. And since it couldn't target me, it was targeting other drivers head on that were coming my way from the opposite direction. And I would actually see drivers.
So to continue on with what I was saying, I ran out of memory on the other phone that I was making the video with, so I'm switched over to the computer here. But what I was trying to tell you is that I've actually seen other drivers basically instantly incapacitated by this effect of this SMD. I knew exactly what was going on. I've seen it a number of times it happened. And I've also seen drivers ahead of me driving, and you think it's distracted driving. It's not distracted driving, because clearly when I passed the person in the 4 lane, this is a 4 lane, I was on the, they were whichever lane I passed them, they were not using the telephone, and it did not appear sleepy, just suddenly losing control of their car, or as if they were sleepy, but using no phone. So one of the things I want to tell you is, if this is an artificial intelligence or if it is controlled by an intelligence, let's go with the theory that it's an artificial intelligence. If this is an artificial intelligence, it does learn. It learns to play tricks, it learns to play games, and what I mean by that is it will learn you. Once it is discovered by you, it will adapt. It will adapt to its tactics, and it will try to trick you into doing some of the things that I just told you. Say, for instance, one of the things I just told you was that when you recognize this thing and it's aware that you are aware, it will change its tactics. What I mean by that is the thing I just mentioned a while ago. Say, for instance, you want to do your little test and see if this thing is actually, if it's actually you with possibly eye problems, if your eyes dry or something like that. If you want to test this theory, be aware. Once you let it know that You know it exists. It will not leave you alone, first of all, and it probably bothers everyone anyway, for that matter. And if you are targeted by this thing, there's a reason for it, and I suspect that it is targeting the most educated people there are. Why? I just suspect that. Something that I picked up on the news about a college student that was traveling back from North Carolina on I 77, and they got into an accident, and it really caught my attention. It was at a time in which my awareness of this was really high, and I had planned on traveling that interstate anyway, and that's a story I'm going to get to in just a minute, in which they were traveling back from North Carolina, and they ended up in an accident which cost them their lives, and they happened to be college students. So I do want to tell you this. This thing is adaptable. It's artificial intelligence. Let's go with that theory. What this thing does is, if it recognizes that you recognize that it exists, if it becomes aware that you are aware, it will change its tactics. If one of your tactics is to catch it, or to detect it, or to recognize it, and it sees that you're doing that, it's going to purposely target your eye at a specific time in which it will cause you to have an accident. Coming up over the top of a hill, there's another car coming, you don't see it, you plan on looking over at it to catch it, the effects of it, to get it to leave you alone, or whatever the case may be. You're testing your theory out, you're putting your hand up to block the laser. At that particular moment, you may become distracted and be the victim of its tactics if it can't subdue you, and then as a result you may end up getting into an accident. So be careful about that. Another thing is, say for instance, it may do this if the police officer, and this is kind of weird because it recognizes law enforcement. One of the things I've noticed is, if law enforcement is around, this thing at times has stopped with its effects. It completely stops. If law enforcement is passing by, like in the other lane, riding through town, law enforcement passes by you, it may stop. Or if law enforcement passes by the other way, coming from the other way, passing by you, it may stop. And it may do just the opposite. When law enforcement is around, it may turn up its intensity to try to make you look like you are an incapacitated driver, which will cause you to get pulled over. I've put this information out there vaguely before, and I have noticed that there are certain members of for which that I have mentioned just now that have taken some precautionary measures, and as a result, I have seen some changes, and I think they have picked up on something that seems quite one of those things you don't want to talk about to other people, because other people may find that you may be crazy or something, but this is undeniable proof. So let me go with this what you can do to protect yourself kind of thing. The first thing that I thought about, this thing has to be able to see in order to navigate. I have two theories on how it's able to navigate, how it's able to see. The first is visual. If this thing is operating, let's say it's operating in a stealth mode that we can all theorize that it's operating in, and that's invisibility. Second theory is it's operating in a different dimension, and it has to use the only way that it can affect us by way of doing everything I just said it does from its other dimension is to use an invisible laser pointed at our eye to produce the effects that it wants to affect for whatever reason it's trying to do it, possibly for the theory in which I just mentioned, targeting people that are most intelligent for some reason. And there's been far too many deaths in this state. This is 2019 right now, December 2019, and to date the number of people that have died of car accidents in this state is a little bit higher than 900 people. Times before in the past I paid attention to this, and this number has hovered around 600. It's been that way for the last 4 or 5 years from this date, between 600-700 people, and this year it's 900 people. and it's about that consistent rate every single year. So if it seems that you recognize a time, if you remember a time, if you're old enough and you've been paying attention, yes, the population is decreasing. Yes, there are less cars on the road than there used to be. If something has ever seemed off to you, this is the reason. There are lots of people, possibly in every state of this country, that are dying on the interstates, on the roadways. My theory is the result of this, what I'm trying to tell you. They want to say it's distracted driving. They want to say it's drinking and driving, but I have yet to remember ever seeing a person that was drunk and driving, that I thought that was drunk, that I've passed by, looked in the car at, or using the telephone. There's not many people that use the telephone. They're always using Bluetooth now to communicate. And you hear those people, you see those people talking in midair. They're not holding the phone up to their ear anymore. I, for one, use this earpiece when I talk on the phone. There's just not that many people holding the phone up to their head while they're talking. So the distracted driving theory, in my opinion, is out the window. Now, let me tell you something about Interstate 77 that I've discovered. It's the most scariest interstate to be on. The interstate between South Carolina and North Carolina, whether you're traveling north or whether you're traveling south. It's a little more scary to travel from North Carolina to South Carolina on Interstate 77. This SMD takes on a little more aggressive approach. Let me explain. I have noticed, and it's been my experience, that this SMD does all the things that I just mentioned, and it goes a step further. It actually, I've observed, I've noticed, this is not a theory, this is what I've experienced, that while being fully awake, although somehow put into a subdued state, but awake at the same time, have watched my hands actually make phantom moves with the steering wheel. Clearly awake, clearly in some type of state in which I'm thinking, I'm awake, I see everything, I hear everything, but my hands seem to take on control on their own. And I caught, while still awake, while still thinking, didn't fall asleep, my hands actually guide the steering wheel off the roadway. And let me tell you something, it's the most spookiest thing ever, because you're supposed to be in control of your own hands and arms and feet and whatever, but when you see your hands moving in a manner in which you know you're not doing, and it makes you second guess why you did that, and you're about to run off the roadway and you catch yourself only because you see that you're running off the road, but you don't feel that you're moving your own hands, that's spooky. One of the things I've noticed about all the drivers in North Carolina on I-77 near Charlotte, coming to Charlotte, coming out of Charlotte, everyone has this, you can feel it, you can feel this, everyone has this awareness, this acute awareness of the other driver, very acute. It's a high alert kind of feeling. When one person breaks, everyone takes evasive action. And it's like, I've listened to the news from the Charlotte TV station. They have mentioned all the accidents that are happening on I-77. Is it something sinister or something else? They know. They have a feeling, they have a theory, but no one's talking. Everyone's afraid to talk. They're afraid to mention it. They are very just petrified, if you ask me, but everyone knows that there's something not right. I've seen accidents on I-77 in front of me that made no sense whatsoever. Cars driving perfectly, and all of a sudden, bam, they veer off the roadway. They veer into the next lane suddenly, as if, say for instance, there's a fight in the car and someone jerks the steering wheel. That's the kind of thing I've seen before. Or someone veers over to the next car, and it's not distracted driving. It's not distracted driving. And it happens at a point in which you have to ask yourself, what the hell? And these are some of the things I've noticed. And like I said, there's an acute sense of an awareness on that interstate. It's a very scary interstate to drive on. Okay, so with that said, one of the things I've done was I've taken it upon myself to took a little trip, traveled I-77 towards Charlotte with the full intent of seeing just how fast, in speed, miles per hour, this SMD travels On my way back from Charlotte, North Carolina, on I-77, I have clocked this SMD at an excess of 105 miles per hour. It kept up with me. One of the things that I did for evasive action was to change lanes at that speed. It has trouble keeping up on curves. If you're on the interstate and you're driving at an excess speed of 100 miles an hour and you go around the curve, it has trouble keeping up a little bit. And if you speed up a little on the curve, it has a little trouble lining up. It has trouble of keeping a lock on your eye, if you will. And or if you were to brake, certainly, which I would not recommend braking on the interstate at 100 miles an hour, due to the fact that you don't know how your tires are going to respond to it, and if your anti-lock is going to fail, or who's behind you, who's around you, or if the condition roadways are wet or something like that. I really wouldn't advise trying that unless you're on the straightaway and there's no one around you and you think this thing is doing it and you want to test whatever, but still wouldn't advise it. Don't do it. But this is what I did. At 100 miles an hour, I braked suddenly, and I could feel the effect of this thing rush past me, as if it's a drone that's following me, targeting my eye. But when I hit the brakes, I felt the effect leave, and I felt this feeling of relief, because this thing had me on such locks for so long, driving on the interstate, that it just produced this overwhelming, subdued effect. And I was really good on the coffee. I was drinking my coffee at the time, but when this thing actually loses track, focus, lock on your eye, your sense of awareness picks up very fast, and you become alert back to the level that you're supposed to be, and you'll actually breathe a sigh of relief, because it's just that overwhelming, it's just that disturbing when it tries to subdue you, and you wake up, and you feel much better until it locks back on the position again, and you're like, damn. Another thing I want to tell you is this: if this is an artificial intelligence, or if it's being controlled by intelligence, and it's just going to be very difficult for you to resist the urge to do this. Showing anger at this thing, cursing at it, swearing at it, giving it the middle finger, don't do it. It will retaliate. If you lose control and do exactly what I told you not to do, well, you'll find out. Okay, one of the things I've done, I did that, I lost control, cursed at it, because I know this is an invisible drone. I know what it's doing, it's undeniable. I cursed at it, sweared at it, put my middle finger up at it, rolled the window down, all kinds of things. Swerved a little bit, tried to get it to lose track of my eye, sped up a little, it caught up, broke, hit the brakes, sped up again. I could feel the effect go past me forward, felt the effect go behind me, because it, felt the feeling of, okay, I'm alert now, I'm speeding up, and then it slowly catches back up with me again and realigns its laser back to my eye. So I sweared at it, Next thing I know, I have a flat tire. On the passenger front side. Whether or not this thing has the ability to fire a laser at your... Well, see, I had a flat tire, but there was no damage to the tire, which is very odd. And I made it back into town. I happened to have an electric air pump the tire back up. I was very spooked out by what had happened. I was looking around at the sky, knowing exactly what had happened. I kept my mouth shut, went home. And that's the story on that. So I want to be aware of that. And if you don't believe me, go ahead and feel the way you want to feel about it and see what happens. Because this thing acts like it's has a right to do what it does. And when you swear at it, after you become aware of it, it will retaliate. So that's some of the things that I'm telling you about. Now, if you have any experiences with this, if you know about this, if you have any questions, the email address will be in the video, and possibly at the bottom of the link, at the bottom of the page, it will be a link to my email address. So I'll just put it in the video so that you'll see it. And also, copies of these videos will be on CD, on DVD, available upon request, because this is information that's very useful and needs to be gotten out there. So like, subscribe, share this video with other people. It's very important. Maybe one day someone will be able to create a drone that can detect this thing. Also, I want to tell you this thing can be seen with an infrared camera. It can be seen with an infrared camera. There are people who have caught this on video with an infrared camera. It looks like a sphere. Um, there's actually a video where someone caught this thing flying across their backyard, and it tried its best to avoid him, but the guy, he kept moving his camera until he caught it, and it acted just like an intelligence, because it was trying to dip and dodge, back and forth, hide behind trees, come back, and as he kept calling it and telling it to come here, it stopped and it moved a little forward, back, backwards and everything, as if it were unsure about being hurt. It seems to have some type of self-preservation to it, sense of mind, sense of thinking, if it's an artificial intelligence. Something to quite think about. But it can be seen with an infrared camera. One thing I want to tell you, if you use your cell phone to try to shock it into realizing, hey, it's being watched, and using your cell phone camera to, you won't see it on your cell phone camera, but don't let it know that. If you hold your phone up in the position you think it is to get it to move, and it will move to avoid a camera. It also tries to avoid a dash cam. It never wants to get in front of a dash cam. If you're using your dash cam, if you have a type of dash cam that keeps a constant video going, you want to make it sure that you disable that function to have it so that the dash cam video, on most dash cam videos I've seen, they stay on for a certain period of time and the screen goes blank, so that you're not constantly, staring at your dash cam while you're driving. So if you're using that type and it happens to be recording, and if you can switch it to the night function so that the infrared LEDs light up, that makes a difference, because once you swivel your dash cam at it in the direction that you detected it, saying that you can feel it, and you'll learn to feel in what direction this thing is in over time. It will move, and it will avoid being directly in front of that dash cam. Now, what I want to tell you about your cell phone camera, don't let it know that it can't be seen, because see, they put certain filters now on all cameras so that it does not detect infrared. Why? Because if you know how to remove the infrared filter, you can see this thing, but don't let it know that your camera isn't able to see it, because what it does is, once it avoids it and wants to check out whether or not you actually see it. How you think it does that? This is what I theorize. This thing flies around to the back side of your, or side of your window, backside, looking through your backside window, and looks to see if it's being seen. There's probably more than one of them. Assume that. One speaks to the other some kind of way, tells it, hey, he can't detect you, and your defense that you may have at that time for making it move a little bit for that short period of time may be gone. Because I did this one time, left the camera on too long. It did go away, came back, camera had no effect, so I theorized that another one told another one, that there's no visuals, and it kept continuing to do what it did, no matter how many times I tried to, surprise it with the camera and get a video of it. And I actually put it in black and white, and it avoids, for some odd reason, it avoids. Now, this may be a particular type of infrared spectrum that may not be emitting the spectrum that can be detected. Of course, there's still the infrared filter on it, because didn't happen to catch it. But I do want to tell you one thing. I did happen to catch. You know how when you put your camera out into the open, and sometimes it will box on certain things or face or whatever? Yeah, it did lock on to something one time that wasn't even there. Did lock on to something. Little blocks, little tiny blocks is what it showed, not the actual face recognition square, open square. It was like the little blocks, and it did lock onto something. One little block, and it did lock onto it, and this thing was moving. And it detected something. So I just want to tell you, it can do that, but just don't leave your camera open too long if you want to be successful in using that as a type of defense. Another type of defense that is most effective is a high intensity LED flashlight, a tactical flashlight, or tactical flashlight on strobe function is the most effective. To avoid getting in trouble with this while you're driving, you want to keep it under your dash but pointed out your window. This is most effective at night, but it can be used in the daytime without being detected by the police or any other drivers or distracting the other drivers, and you can have it just about, here, a little bit lower, just below your dashboard, and have this thing, your strobe light, flashing in the direction that this SMD is. It will try to hide behind your rear view mirror on your passenger side. It will try to hide behind the column between your windshield and your side window, door window. It will try to hide there in a position in which it's not being affected and still try to get you. So you may have to use move your strobe light a little to the left, a little to the right, so that you're most effective in blinding it. Because the high intensity strobe light will blind it, and or just on the constant function. What it does is on your constant using your tactical light on constant beam, or if you have a flashlight that can focus also. If you have it where it's focusing, don't put it on the smallest focal point. Make it a little bit wide and blind it. It will back off. It will back off to the point in which it's far enough away that it still wants to try. It's persistent. It's very persistent. It will still try to get you. It will still try to target your eye, but it will back off quite a ways to the point where it can't, because the intensity is so bright, and it just quits and moves away. And or it will just like I just said, it'll do one of those two things. But the strobe light is most effective on the widest beam for protection. Also, crazy thing I've tried is this thing recognizes what a gun is also. Take a gun out your dashboard. Don't shoot it. Don't shoot it, and don't shoot out the window, because you don't know what you're going to shoot. It will recognize a firearm. How crazy is that? So it makes you wonder, is this thing being controlled by a remote source, by somebody, or is it some type of artificial intelligence? But it will recognize and flee as if it has a mind of self-preservation when it sees a firearm. How crazy is that? So what is this that we're dealing with? We're dealing with something from a foreign country, or we're dealing with something that's a foreign intelligence, or is it an artificial intelligence? Which is it? If you have a clue, you have an idea of what's going on, what I would like is to see someone, like I said a minute ago, somebody please build a drone that has laser capabilities on it, burning laser capabilities possibly, whichever the case is. Just detect it, video it, have a drone that has automated AI features to it, so they can track this thing down and show the video where this drone is, actually show us a video of this drone following this thing. This thing can move up to 100 miles an hour in excess. I've clocked it recently after that trip from I-77 up to about 100, 105, going towards Charleston on 26, about 110 miles an hour. So, and it was kind of tough to get away from. So, yeah, it did follow me up to 110 miles an hour. Crazy. But anyway, it's getting a little difficult to shake. Also, it learns the shift patterns of your vehicle, automatic or manual. It will learn and mimic your shift patterns to stay steady and keep tracking you. Another thing I want to tell you that too. Yes, you can outrun it. And if you're driving a V6 or better, you can outrun it, but it will catch up. And also, that's its tactic also. If you're known to keep doing that over and over again, it may just keep on bugging you to trick you into doing that, and later on it knows down the road there's a point in which there's either a cop, someone coming over the top of the hill, something in the roadway. So you want to be careful about that. Any little thing that you do as your tactic, as defense, it could be its tactic as a means of getting you caught, and you doing something to cause yourself to get in trouble or an accident. So anyone has any information about this, want to share anything you know about it, if you possibly have a drone that's already outfitted with infrared that can detect these things, that can chase it down, that would be much appreciated. How can we take our modern day drones right now and with an infrared camera, and actually have it so that it will have the software that can chase this thing down, that can follow it, that can identify it, follow it. I'd love to see a video like that. This has been the Black Space Project. Thanks for watching.
Now playing window. Focus on pause button. Contains playback controls view pane. Suggestions view pane. Button. Unnamed __0. Status and command bar view pane. Via main pane. Via main pane. Albumar pane. Albumar pane. Albumart. Albumart. Spia main. Spia main. Button. Unnamed __0. Untitled. Notepad window. Focus on the Black Space Project text. The Black Space Project contains the Black Space Project text. Location bar. Desktop /Black Space Project /line control. Focus on run. Being selected. Untitled. Notepad window. Focus on the Black Space Project text. The Black Space Project contains the Black Space Project. 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 Now playing window. Focus on Albumart button. Contains playback controls in pane. Transport subview. Suggestions view pane. Button. Unnamed __0. Status and command bar view pane. Via main pane. Via main pane. Albumar pane. Albumar pane. Albumart. Spia main. Spia main. Button. Unnamed __0. Untitled. Notepad window. Focus on the Black Space Project text. The Black Space Project contains the Black Space Project text. The Black Space Project. Application menu bar with 5 items. The Black Space Project. The Black Space Project. The Black Space Project. The Black Space Project.